I'm really trying not to get my hopes up about the Patriots trading for Brandon Aiyuk, but those rumors are heating up. Plus, a physical day at Patriots training camp and the latest on the Matthew Judon contract situation. All of that and more here on Patscast.
Hats cast in the air, voices loud. Drake May shouts to the crowd, feel the sound. Old wolves no more.
Welcome to Patscast. I'm Brad Whitaker. Good to be with you. The Patriots wrapped up day number 10 of training camp today in pads. A very physical practice. The defense was allowed to tackle offensive players to the ground. So that was very interesting. The defense dominated for the most part, and I'll get to all that in a moment, as well as the latest developments in the Matthew Judon contract situation. But first, I want to talk about Brandon Aiyuk, who I've talked about a ton on this podcast, even pre-draft. Will the Patriots make a move? We know they've been lacking a true number one wide receiver for a decade plus now. Brandon Aiyuk would make a real difference to that receiving core. But we were hearing as late as last week that the Niners were insisting that they had no intentions of trading Brandon Aiyuk. You know, he's upset about his contract situation, is currently set to make just about $14 million on the final year of his rookie contract. But talks have stalled with the Niners, and those conversations have shifted a little bit. According to Cam Marino of NFLDraftBuzz.com, both the Patriots and the Cleveland Browns are frontrunners in trade discussions for Aiyuk, and both teams, I guess, are willing to pay him more than $30 million per year on a new deal. And logically, the Patriots and the Browns have the cap space to work with, and they would be the trade partners to get a deal done for Aiyuk. And look, this would be a huge difference maker, right? You give Brandon Aiyuk over to Jacoby Brissett and eventually Drake May. He's there for 3 to 4 years. You got a lot of great young receivers there, like Demario Douglas, who I think is going to be a Pro Bowl caliber slot receiver this year if he stays on the field. You got Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, and a lot of hope with those guys. You add Brandon Aiyuk to that mix, suddenly you go from having a bad, or at the very least, underrated receiving core. I talked about it on the podcast yesterday. I actually think the Patriots have a decent receiving core. It's just nobody knows who these guys are. But you go from, at least in the eyes of the national media, a bad receiving core to a very good one just by adding Brandon Aiyuk. But there is a bit of a caveat here, because Patriots are only going to trade for Aiyuk if he's willing to sign a long-term contract extension. So even though he's on a rookie contract, doesn't have a no-trade clause or anything like that, he essentially does, because he could say, look, I don't want to play for the Patriots. They're in a rebuilding situation. I like Jacoby Brissett, but he's not an elite quarterback, and we don't really know what's going to happen with Drake May or Joe Milton and their young quarterbacks. I want to go to a contender, and Aiyuk has expressed that in the past, that if he were to go to another team, he'd love to go to a contender. That being said, not a lot of teams with the cap space to trade for a guy like Brandon Aiyuk, and I'm sure all 31 NFL teams would jump at the opportunity to trade for Aiyuk, but it really just depends on do the teams have the cap space, what would Aiyuk be working with, and what will the San Francisco 49ers get in return. Now, the Patriots offering a first-round draft pick, I think you can probably write that off, because the Patriots are expected to be the worst, second, or third worst team in the NFL this year. They add Aiyuk, yeah, they're probably going to be a little bit better, but we're still talking, at least in the eyes of the national media, a bottom 10 NFL team. So a first-round pick is going to be very valuable. I think it would be a bit of a reach there, even if it's just like a first-round pick for Aiyuk. I don't see that happening. That being said, a second-round pick and another player that you can throw in there would perhaps help the Niners be willing to make that deal. And there are some rumors floating out there. One of them is a second-round pick for 2025 and Matthew Judon. We know Judon is not in a great contract situation, had a bit of an outburst Monday of last week at training camp. I'll talk about the latest developments there in just a second, but you got a guy like Judon to the defense in San Francisco, and you only have to pay him $6.5 million, and maybe they're willing to sign him to a contract extension. I think every party would be very happy in that scenario, including Matthew Judon, who wants to play in New England, but him going to a contender and getting paid more money, like, he's not going to say no to that. He'll be very happy in that situation. Another rumor that's out there is you put in a guy like Kendrick Bourne, who was previously with the San Francisco 49ers, played very well there, definitely grew a little bit in New England, had a career year. His first year with the Patriots was on par for another career year last year before he got hurt midway through the season in Miami. Maybe you could do a second-round pick and Kendrick Bourne for a guy like Brandon Aiyuk. And I know Niners fans, if you're listening or watching this podcast, you're probably like, that's not enough. Like, we need more than that for Brandon Aiyuk. But you have to remember, Brandon Ayuk's value goes way down because he is on a 1-year contract at the moment. If you're trading for a guy that's locked up for 4 years, then yeah, you can move hell and earth to trade him away and get a lot in return, but you're probably not going to get a ton in return. But the Patriots have the opportunity to offer up a lot more than even a team like the Cleveland Browns could, who I guess is probably considered a team that can at the very least compete in the AFC North. So maybe the Browns would be willing to give up a first-round pick, and that would change discussions a little bit. But if the Browns are only offering like a second and a player or two, well, then the Patriots probably would have the better trade package. But again, if Aiyuk doesn't want to play for the Pats, well, then this is never going to happen, of course. But this is definitely heating up. It doesn't seem like Aiyuk and the Niners are anywhere near close to a deal at the moment. So the Patriots really are the logical trade partner. Kendrick Bourne, a second-round pick, or maybe you throw in a fourth or something else in there to spice up the deal a little bit. That would go a long way. But Aiyuk, coming off of perhaps a career year, over 1,300 yards, 7 touchdowns in 2023, and he did all of that with George Kittle and Deebo Samuel and all the great receivers in San Francisco. So you would expect if he came to New England, he'd put up even greater numbers than that, which is really saying something. I mean, he'd be the best Patriots receiver since Randy Moss, in my opinion. I mean, it's certainly since Julian Edelman. He's the last New England wideout to top 1,000 yards. He did that back in 2019. I think Aiyuk would do that pretty easily, especially with all the young players that he'd be working alongside. But let's say Demario Douglas, I'm right about this, he is a Pro Bowl caliber slot receiver, who I really think he is. Nobody's talking about him in the national media, but Pop Douglas, I think, is capable of being that. Let's say Jalen Polk is at least at the level of a guy like Jacoby Myers, and Javon Baker can hit in spurts with a few big plays. And then you also have a guy like KJ Osborne out there, and all the good tight ends the Patriots have: Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, Jaheim Bell, who could potentially contribute. That's a good receiving core. And I already think it's a decent receiving core, even though that sounds crazy to the national media. But you add in all those young guys, those B-level receivers with a real A-level guy like Brandon Aiyuk, well, then Jalen Polk, Douglas, Javon Baker, KJ Osborne, they're going to be able to do a lot more out there on the field, because teams are going to look at Brandon Aiyuk and they're going to say, let's double team this guy. Well, Pop Douglas is going to get open a lot more on slant routes. Same with KJ Osborne. Javon Baker and Polk are going to get open a lot more. There's a lot that the Patriots could do, and it would certainly make life a lot easier for Jacoby Brissett and eventually Drake May as he becomes the quarterback, the franchise piece of the future. Really exciting to hear these rumors heating up. Like I said, I'm trying not to get my hopes up about it, but it looks like the Patriots and the Browns are emerging as the top 2 contenders for trading for Brandon Aiyuk. It really just depends. Is Aiyuk willing to sign long-term? And will the Patriots, are they able to offer up something that the San Francisco 49ers will bite at? But once again, the Patriots had a training camp practice today under the sweltering 90-degree sun. Been a very hot training camp in Foxborough. Feels like Georgia, not necessarily New England, especially with the humidity there. And it was very physical. It featured a lot of goal line drills. The running game was featured a lot, even though they didn't do a ton out there. And the defense ultimately emerged victorious because they were very physical, and they actually were able and allowed to tackle players to the ground. There were a couple plays where Hunter Henry got tackled to the ground. This is according to Tom Curran and Phil Perry, where it looked like he might get injured. So there's a reason NFL teams don't usually allow for full contact practices during training camp. I wouldn't expect the Patriots to do that again tomorrow, but maybe they will. It's good to have full contact football occasionally, and this was the first time the Patriots were able to do that. Back in full pads, would expect them to continue playing in full pads with the occasional off day in shells, but ultimately the defense excelled. They did a lot of goal line drills, and the offense struggled to generate really much of anything, especially during the 6-11-on-11 periods. Not a ton noteworthy in terms of the performance by Jacoby Brissett and Drake May. They did each throw interceptions. Brissett's came during the first goal line drill, while May's was the result of a tip pass during the 11-on-11 session. The offensive line continued to struggle, not really being able to protect the quarterback and create holes for the run game. Patriots really did focus on the run game today, even though they weren't able to do a lot. Once again, Chuks Okorafor did not participate in practice, so we saw a bit of a different offensive line first-team unit. Vidarian Lowe, I know Patriot fans don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. He was back at left tackle with the first offensive team. The same three players in the center with Sidy Sow at left guard, David Andrews at center, and Michael Wenu staying at right guard. Don't expect him to start at right tackle, at least initially this season, like we thought he would. And then Calvin Anderson was back at right tackle with the first team. So Caden Wallace did not participate with the first team, but he did rotate a little bit with the first team at left tackle. So he didn't start with the first team, but he did participate. So I was incorrect about that. Did rotate a little bit with the first team at left tackle. So that was good to see. And also took some reps at right tackle with the second team. Nick Leverett with the second team at left guard. Antonio Mafi at right guard. So he wasn't at the center position. And then undrafted rookie Charles Turner was actually the one at center, snapping the ball to Drake May. And like I said, May didn't have exactly the best practice out there. Bit of a mixed performance, but did make some good decisions. He hasn't been really throwing the ball down the field so far in training camp, which worries some people, but doesn't worry me a ton. I like a quarterback that's willing to take a check down. Tom Brady was certainly that quarterback, and Drake May at least is willing to get the small plays out there when a lot isn't available downfield, which is very limited going against this Patriots defense, but he did throw an interception off of a tip pass. Brissett was a little bit more efficient out there, I'd say, than Drake May was. Did have that interception during red zone work, but completed all four of his passes in 11-on-11 drills. Joe Milton actually worked with the second team offense for the first time, so that shows that he has the potential for some increased reps as they get closer this week to the preseason opener on Thursday. And Zappe, once again, was limited in reps, but did get some reps with the third team out there. But overall, practice stats, Jacoby Brissett went 10 of 13 with an interception. Drake May, fewer reps, 5 of 10, also with an interception. Milton, 4 of 7. And then Bailey Zappe completed 2 of his 3 passes on the day. But there were some good news. Good news to report about Drake May. I know the national media has been reporting that Drake May is really struggling. Joe Milton's actually the better quarterback. Colin Cowherd says Joe Milton's the better quarterback. But you have to take all of that with a grain of salt, because Albert Breer had a report today where he said, quote, Drake May has had rough moments to be sure, but New England Patriots people attribute that to him running with the second team and how the team's offensive line depth issue has really shown up with that group. What's impressed his coaches most is how he's how good of a processor he is on the field. He can go in his progression from 1 to 2 to 3 fast, and even threw a touchdown pass to his fourth read in red zone drills the other day. He sees things right away, and his footwork has come a long way too. And there have been some setbacks in terms of May's mechanics and his footwork so far in camp. He cleaned it up very quickly at rookie minicamp and into OTAs, and it has resurfaced a little bit when he's facing pressure in practice. But overall, his footwork, night and day difference from what it was at North Carolina and what it looked like his first time in a Patriots uniform back at rookie minicamp. So that's good to see, and I think something that, at least I had a concern about before the Patriots even drafted Drake May, is how quickly is he going to be able to go through his progressions and get rid of the football quickly in an NFL offense. And it sounds like, at least according to Albert Breer, he's very fast at going between his first, second, third, and even fourth reads. Hearing that he hit his fourth read on a touchdown pass in the red zone the other day when you have limited time to work with going against that Patriots defense, that's really good to hear. And you have to remember, he's been getting snaps with the second team with guys like Antonio Maffei, who, in my opinion, has no business being out there at the center position. So, he'll be working more, hopefully, in the coming days or the coming weeks and getting first team reps, actually having David Andrews snap him the ball. There's been some pre-snap issues there, but if he continues to work with the first team and is able to continue to develop and get his reads the way they need to be and get rid of the football quickly, and Joe Milton's done that a little bit too, to a certain extent. That's why so many people are saying high praise about Joe Milton. Well, those quarterbacks will continue to develop, and we'll see Drake May on the field sooner rather than later. But the first preseason game is this Thursday. Drake May will get more cracks at it in the second and third preseason game as well, and then we'll have a better idea of just how much he is progressing. At this point, I think it's highly unlikely, 10 to 20%, that he starts week one. But a lot can happen between now and the beginning of September. So we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll be here at Pat's Cast to tell you about Drake May's development along the way. And we'll certainly be here Thursday after the first preseason game with instant reaction, talking about Drake May's performance and if Jacoby Brissett starts, how he did as well, along with Joe Milton and Bailey Zappi, who I have no clue why he's still on the roster. But I would assume all four of those guys will play, or at least the three guys without Brissett if they decide to rest him for a day. But if they do rest Brissett on Thursday, that probably increases the likelihood of him starting week one. Now, I want to get to Matthew Judon and the latest on his contract situation. Backing up the timeline a little bit, on Monday, he had his outburst at practice, first padded practice, came out in a sweatshirt, sat in a trash can, kind of pouted. Gerard Mayo said some words to him. He said some words back, got very animated, went into the locker room, came back out, got very animated with Elliott Wolf and Matt Groh, the de facto GMs of the Patriots, went back in, and we didn't see him again until Thursday's practice of last week. But then suddenly, eventually he was a full participant again, and he was a full participant once again at today's practice. And today was his first availability to the media, and he said, quote, "I gotta play. I didn't say nothing about practice. I gotta go out there and play. I gotta play the game. I gotta do what I'm contracted, obligated to do, so I don't lose no money." So a little nod there to Allen Iverson, not talking about practice. And then he was asked about what happened last Monday with his outburst with Gerard Mayo and Elliott Wolf and Matt Groh. He said, talking about Mayo, "We had a conversation. I didn't want to be a distraction to the team, so I went inside. I wasn't participating in none of those drills that day, so I went inside. Then I got a message, so I came back to talk to the GM, our GMs. Then I went back inside. Sorry, I'm animated, and I talk with my hands. I'm going to start talking like this," had his arms to his side, "and stop being so animated." He continued about talking with Gerard Mayo, said, quote, "I feel like that's every conversation, regardless of the emotions involved. You try to get to an understanding, and I think just because we don't agree doesn't mean we don't understand each other's side. You got to talk to them, man. Like I said before, I would pay myself, and we would never talk about it, but it's not up to me. I told y'all I want to stay here for the rest of the remainder of my career, so obviously that would equal more money. I only got 1 year left, so with more years would come more money. That's usually how contracts work. It's not up to me, y'all. They come out here every day. You just don't ask them questions." Okay, so, he's handling it better than last week, but it doesn't sound like he's made a lot of progress with his contract talks. And I was kind of hoping there was last week when Judon was back on the field in full pads, being a full participant in practice. You would think that meant they've made some progress in contract talks, but at least from what he said at today's presser, it doesn't sound like it. But Judon knows he's only getting paid $6.5 million. If he's healthy and on the field 17 games, well, then he's probably worth at least $20 million. He knows that, the Patriots know that, but the Patriots also understand that they're a rebuilding team. They're prioritizing extending their foundational pieces, their younger pieces, which they did earlier in the offseason. And because of that, guys like Davon Godchaux and Matthew Judon were not a big priority. Now, Godchaux did get his contract extension, so hopefully that helps with the conversations with Matthew Judon and Elliott Wolf and Matt Groh, but as of right now, it doesn't sound like they've made a ton of progress here, but Judon said he's going to be back out there. Now, he did say that a couple weeks ago before his outburst in practice, so we'll see how that continues to play out. Perhaps another thing that's happening is the Patriots are making calls about Brandon Aiyuk, and they're willing to throw Matthew Judon into those conversations, and you're not going to sign him to a contract extension unless you're willing to do like a sign and trade or something like that, but maybe that's also factoring in to the reason they haven't extended him thus far, but as of right now, it doesn't sound like a lot's happening, so we'll continue to monitor in the coming days and weeks, and hopefully the Patriots and Judon can come closer to an extension, but look, Judon didn't play, 13 games last year, and the Patriots defense was still one of the better units in the entire NFL, so yeah, you don't want to lose him. He's probably the best or second to third best defensive player on the field when he's playing, but Patriots have a lot of depth at nearly every defensive position. And, you sign a guy like Matthew Judon to a contract extension, sure, you have salary cap space, but that's less space to work with down the road. If you want to make a trade for Brandon Aiyuk or you want to trade for a big-name receiver next offseason or even the year after that, well, that's just more cap space that's going to be chewed up if you extend Judon for $15 million a year, or whatever the Patriots are willing to offer him. So that all factors into this, and none of us expect the Patriots to be in the Super Bowl this year, even if they get Brandon Aiyuk. Jacoby Brissett is probably barely a top 30 quarterback, and Drake May is a year or two away from being a real contributor in the NFL, depending on how his development's going. So you kind of want to keep a lot of cap space as you head into the 2025 offseason, so you know where you're at, you have room to work with, and you can address positions of need like wide receiver or like left tackle, depending on how the 2024 season goes. So I understand why the Patriots haven't done this yet, and hopefully we'll get more news about Brandon Aiyuk, about Matthew Judon, about how the Patriots are looking coming out of this week's preseason game, but right now it's still too early to tell. So we'll be here at PatsCast to cover it. If you like this video, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, or subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. For Spotify, we'll be back the rest of the week with more Patriots coverage.
PatsCast in the air, voices loud. Drake May shouts to the crowd, feel the sound. Old woes no more with Aiyuk near. Catching dreams for the team, no fear. Jacoby passes, electrify the night. Hope in every pass, every fight. Past fading shadows, Aiyuk bright. Glory days coming back on the lights. Jacoby passes, electrify the night.